Good morning. This Sunday, on September 26, Germany will vote for a new parliament, after which Angela Merkel will stand down as chancellor after 16 years. Opinion polls indicate the vote would be too close to call and potential coalition options wide open. Today at the studio, I am joined by Dr. Ronald Meinardus. Thank you very much for being with us. He's a senior research fellow at the Greek think tank ELIAMEP and also a political analyst. It's great to have you at the studio. We will be talking about the elections, of course, but I'll be mostly asking about how the election results will affect the relationship between our country and Germany. But let's start with the recent polls. We don't see much excitement at the streets, you know. Maybe it is because Germany is Germany. Maybe it's because it's how the functional democracies are. Is it because this time it's different for Germany as well?
No, I think the way people campaign and the political parties campaign is very much also an expression of political culture. And political campaigns in Germany tend to be very different than they are in a country like Turkey or in other southern countries, in Greece and Italy and Spain, to give you an example. These huge gatherings and mass meetings you have in Turkey to show strength, we actually don't do them. And also at normal times, this is COVID time, of course, this has an impact on them. We have smaller meetings, and this campaign was very much focused on television and social media, but mainly television. There were many debates between the candidates, and I have the feeling, I'm living in Turkey now, so I cannot say what's happening, but of course I follow this very carefully. People are happy that it's coming to an end because the politicians are repeating and repeating and repeating the same thing, and the debates are becoming kind of boring. And what is maybe interesting, there is not like the one big news item which was somehow influencing debates in the very final stage. So sometimes in campaigns, the parties come up with some scandal or come up with a big story. But this didn't happen. It is actually a very civilized, almost boring process. Although politically, it's very unusual because it's totally open-end, as you say.
Oh, is it because Merkel? Can we say it's Merkel's effect? Because 16 years is a very long time, and she has a special, attitude. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, of course, she's a very special personality. That's without doubt. But no, what is special about her and the makeup of the election? And it's an historic election not only because she's leaving, it's an historic election because it's the first time where we do not have an incumbent, a sitting prime minister or chancellor running for office again. So usually it was Mrs. Merkel and it was another guy from the opposition. And then, of course, Mrs. Merkel had an advantage because she has what we call in German the chancellor bonus, the bonus of the incumbent. But she's out. And so we have these three candidates, and they're all, in this regard, not chancellors. And therefore, this is something unusual, and therefore, it's a historic election.
But it looks like, you will have a coalition government. This is for certain, as most of the times. But we cannot say the formation of this.
No, that we cannot say. We cannot say this, but we can say some things, trusting the polls.
Okay.
First of all, the election is too close to call. Maybe we should tell our viewers a little what are the rankings now. We have and who are the players? The Social Democrats, and we have the Christian Democrats, we have the Liberals, we have the right-wing AfD, and we have the lefts. These are the players, and they will all be represented in Parliament. So they will be over the 5% threshold. Like in Turkey, you also have a threshold, and in Germany it's 5%. For the left, it's a little tricky because they're at 7%. and there is a margin of error with the polls, and this is important, about 2.5%. And the leading SPD, Social Democrats and CDU, they are apart 2%. 3%.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So now, therefore, it's, as we would say, too close to call. And this isn't the number one, too close to call. Number two is that the leading parties are in their 20s, in their mid-20s, low 20s. And usually in Germany, we always have, more or less, always have coalition parties, governments, with very few exceptions, coalition governments. Usually there were two parties. Now we are going for three parties, and that's making it much more difficult.
Okay.
Very much more difficult. And you're right, there is a big debate, and this is actually there are two big questions. The first question is, who will be number one on Sunday evening? So if you turn on the television on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock German time, there will be the exit poll, and usually the exit polls are relatively safe. And then the first question the journalist will ask, who is the number one? Because the number one, she or he, gets the right, the privilege to actually be the person who will put together a coalition.
Right.
Assuming that we have a coalition arithmetic where the biggest party has the chancellor. Hey, wait, we can also think of a situation where three parties come together, and among the three parties is not the strongest party. So then we will have a chancellor from a party who has not the biggest party behind him. So I hope the listeners and viewers understand what I'm saying, but it's very complicated, and that's why, it's unusual for Germany.
Yeah, and also unusual for the latest Turkish politics, but we will have different maybe next time in our elections. Shall we talk about more of Turkish relations, how it can be affected? First, I would like to ask, how do you describe Merkel's approach to Turkey, and how much of it is due to her unique personality? Because commentators usually mentions a special relationship with Merkel and President Erdogan.
Yeah, before we get there, excuse me, but you say it's different than in Turkey. Turkey also has a tradition of a coalition building. And there are some similarities, of course. The systems are totally different. You have a presidential system, and but the coalitions, which in the end come together to create a presidential majority, they are of different parties. And like in Turkey and also in Germany, you have some parties which prefer to cooperate, and others which you have no interest in cooperating with. I'm thinking of a very special party. So this we have also. Maybe one more word before I come to answering your question. For instance, we have the AfD, which is the right-wing party, fascist party, as some say, for good reasons. They have some 11 to 12%. They're very strong on the east, but the other parties do not work with them.
Right.
It's like almost a taboo.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have the left, where the left parties, which is the SPD, if you call them center-left, and the Greens, they would not have a problem. But the CDU and the FDP, the Liberal Party, they are not interested in them. So they're already in the whole discussion of the coalition. You have some rules. Now to Mrs. Merkel.
Just before that,
Yes.
you are right to point out this similarity between Turkey, but we almost forget, because our AKP, the governing party, they are always saying that coalitions are very bad, and you choose us.
But they need it.
And also they are in a part of coalition with MHP. So as to Merkel, how do you describe her approach to Turkey? Is it because of course her party has an approach towards Turkey, but she has this unique kind of dealing with.
I mean, 16 years is a long time.
Right.
It's a very long time. And 16 years in Turkey-German relations is, a hell of a lot of time. And 16 years in Turkish domestic politics is hell of a lot of time.
I remember 16 years.
Yes. And so there were times, and the German-Turkish relations have seen ups and downs. And there has been a good time and there's a bad time. If you speak to our diplomats in Ankara, it's kind of good now. It has been worse, they say, which is a diplomatic way of saying it has also been better. But now, if you look at it historically, and we should, before Mrs. Merkel came to power in 2005, there was a government between SPD and the Greens, and was Gerhard Schröder. And this was, historians and analysts call this the golden age of Turkish German and also Turkish European, because all this has a European dimension. And then Turkey was, and you remember this, it was celebrating the perspective of becoming a full member of the EU, and there was a lot of enthusiasm. And then 2005, there's a change in government, and Mrs. Merkel comes, and she says, "Yok." She says, "No, we will have a privileged partnership, you know this." And this, of course, from a Turkish perspective, is a setback. This is a diplomatic way of describing it. It's a big disappointment. And from there, actually, if you look at the substance of it, it always became worse. In the sense that the privilege, and you have to look at the words, the privileged partnership became then a special partnership, which is now. And which is kind of not very strong. No? But the Mrs. Merkel, and this is the other side of the coin, she was always very pragmatic. She was always very engaging. She is considered actually the only Western statements of stature who has a personal approach to the Turkish president. We almost also have to say that the Turkish president was not always very friendly to her.
Yeah.
There were some wordings which were highly undiplomatic and very insulting, if you see it from a German side. And she somehow was pragmatic about it. And I think the Turkish government will miss her. This is my feeling. And if you look at, if you speak to Turkish analysts and to speak to people close to the government, they would be happy if the CDU stays in government, because they have the feeling that they know what they have there. And Armin Laschet, who is the candidate there, is also called the Turkish Armin. I don't think it's a very fair way of putting it, because he's not that fond, in the sense that he's much more pro-Turkish than would be Mr. Scholz. So this I don't see, but okay, this is what media have made of it.
2 points. One is that insulting comments regarding the dignitaries of other nations from our president is not a news. He's always doing that. Secondly, as to the EU relations, I think the approach taken by the German government is welcomed here. I mean, as far as I can see, the government now, AKP, is not very willing to be, although they say differently, they talk differently, willing to be a EU member state. But this will change after the elections. This might change after the elections. So it's important how we will be approached with the new German government.
So now, what they say and what they want, I don't know. I take the Turkish president by his word. I take the government by their word. And he is on record as saying on more than one occasion that the objective is the full membership. This is the Turkish official policy. Whether it's realistic or not is something else, but this they say. Now, then how do the Germans react to it? And you have to take the Germans as a major power, because whether you like it or not, they are playing the music in the European Union together with the French. Okay. Now, if you look at the party programs, and this is, I think, why you invited me, because I wrote this paper, they are clearly different positions there. The CDU regarding, and this is important because it says more than just what they say regarding it. It somehow reflects also an attitude towards Turkey as a partner and as a society. So the CDU is clear. They say in the party program there will be no membership of Turkey in the EU with the CDU in power.
Okay.
This, I think, is a very problematic statement. We can discuss why it's problematic. I think it's very problematic. And the only other party which says this is the right wing.
Right.
They say, no, Islam is not a part of Europe, and that's, okay, then you have the next step. Yeah. The other parties, the SPD, which the CHP is allied to because they say they're social democrats, whether they are something else, but they say and they're members of the Socialist International, so they have a strong relationship there, the FDP and the Greens. They are not writing Turkey should be member now, but they say we have to keep this perspective open. They say we have to discuss, we have to dialogue with them. And they say, this is the very clearly written in the FDP program, there will be a Turkey after Mr. Erdogan, and Germany, as a big democratic country, must continue talking to Turkey, must continue talking to Turkish civil society, must continue to have the doors open. And this, I think, is a totally different philosophy in German-Turkish policies.
How about the Greens?
The Greens are basically the same. The Greens are probably very more progressive. Because for them the issue of religion or of being different really doesn't play a role, because the Green is a party which is has many members also with a migration background. They have many politicians and candidates also who are of Turkish descent. One of them who is the most unpopular, I don't have to give his name. But no, the Greens are also making this whole thing conditional. To make it clear, this is not to explain this, why this is. The European Union, in the end of the day, is a union of democracies. And the European Union, and for good reasons, is very proud that human rights, the rule of law, transparency, press freedom, and all these things, although there are some issues in Poland and in Hungary, and we have a lot of discussion, but it's totally out of the question to discuss membership of a country whose policies at the present time do not reflect this normative framework.
Exactly.
So that's a no-go. But it's also, from my perspective, totally out of the question to assume that this is permanent.
Sure.
And it's very unfair.
We don't assume. So.
We should not assume, because, as we said, history is fluent and things change, and also Turkey is a very dynamic country, and therefore we should. My position is you should. That's my personal.
The rulers always do not always represent people, you know, and the people's aspirations can be different. I think it is different now in Turkey as well. Germany, the new potential government, I mean the coalition partners, I think the issues, arms exports and refugee deal of Merkel's to 2016 are the potential big differences if, for example, the Greens are included in the...
Yeah, so there are maybe two layers. If you look at the programs, first of all parties have big programs. And in German politics, programs play a big role. And it's not just that they write them and then they forget about them. No, if you look at the debates now, everybody's talking about the program. You said in program so-and-so, you said in program so-and-so, please explain. And then if they have the coalition negotiations, then the leaders of the negotiating teams will come together and say, listen, this is your program, this is my program, where can we find a compromise? And then they sign a contract. Mm-hmm. And this contract then will be the basis of a coalition government. Just to give you the importance of the program, in German we speak of Programmparteien, program parties. Now, the European Union issue is one which plays a role in the Turkey-related chapters, and they all have Turkey-related chapters. The other thing is, with the two parties you mentioned, the Greens and the Linke, the left, the arms export, it's mainly about submarines. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's the migration agreement from 2016. Now, the two parties we mentioned, the Greens and the Linke, they want to terminate both.
Right.
And why is this different?
Same reasons or different?
Yes, more or less. Why is this different? Because this the Germans can do. The European issue is a European issue. They will have to have a council and they have to talk to the French and the Danes and so on. But this, the arms deal, the government can come together tomorrow and say, stop.
Okay. Yeah.
Finished. And with the migration deal, it's a little different because it's a European chapter, very, very problematic, extremely problematic. But then again, we have this normative side. The Greens are basically a human rights party also, and they say the migration deal is not in sync with the international asylum legislation. Things are written there which do not take into account the international law. And so they are saying, no, we have to abolish it.
But the European Union would be very difficult to accept.
Yes,
yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But in politics and these programs, you see many things which are aspirational.
Right.
I say we don't want unemployment or we want to fight unemployment. That's an objective. Okay. But how realistic it is, I mean, but it's aspirational and they have to do something.
Right.
And then they will write into the, for instance, if the Greens come into the government and if they have maybe the foreign ministry, which is one possibility, and one of the scenarios which is a nightmare for Turkey is that Cem Özdemir will be foreign minister of Germany, I beg your pardon, and he will start speaking as a foreign minister as he speaks now as an oppositionist. Yes, he will then say, we want to stop exporting the submarines.
Right.
And I think that will lead to severe issues between Ankara and Berlin.
How likely this possibility that the Greens will be a coalition partner, and how likely that they will take the post of foreign ministry?
Okay, now this is all speculation, but maybe we should look at. We said before that we will have to assume that it will be three parties, and the main difference is actually, and I said again, to make the confusion a little simpler and better understandable. Really, the main issue is who will be the first party. So at the CDU and SPD.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's the main question. And then they need two other parties. The two other parties can only be, in this scenario, the FDP, the Liberal Party, and the Greens. Now, the only question is, if you look at it really very clearly, and there's another model, but let's look at the substance of it, is whether we have CDU, FDP, Green, or SPD, FDP, Green. And now, to make it a little more confusing, usually these are visualized and you have all these parties all have colors.
Yes.
Like
yes.
in Turkey, also the parties have colors. And the SPD, of course, is red. The Greens
green.
are green. And the FDP is yellow. Yeah. And if you take these colors, black, green and yellow, this is the color of the flag of Jamaica.
Yeah.
So we call it the Jamaica coalition. And then the other flag, the other colors are SPD, FDP and Green, which is red, yellow and green, and this is the street lights.
Yeah.
So we call it the Ampel coalition, which is the street light coalition. So there is this big discussion whether we will have a Jamaica or a street light.
Yeah.
So whether it will be
no chance of grand coalition, but
the
grand one.
no, numerically there might.
Oh, really?
Numerically there might, but politically it would be very, very difficult. But again, this I have to say, you said Mrs. Merkel will leave. Yeah, of course she will leave, but it might take weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks till they find a solution.
Oh, really?
She will be caretaker, prime minister, chancellor. Some say it will take maybe until January. This is all scenarios. Yes, and then we will have these negotiations. Again, I must say that with the Grand Coalition, or we say black-red, again, große Koalition schwarz-rot, 4 years ago, it was not as confusing, but there was a possibility to have a Jamaica coalition between CDU, FDP, and Greens. and they were negotiating weeks and weeks and weeks. And the big parties, SPD and CDU, they had already governed for years. They were very unpopular. They had lost almost 10%. But the others couldn't find a compromise. And then for Mrs. Merkel and for the SPD, they said, before we have re-elections, as they do in Israel or in other countries, we said, no, we will not have re-elections. So we will get together in the big coalition again. I think they cannot do it this time because people are they're looking for a change. It's time for a change.
So even a re-election is slightly, but a possibility.
No, this will not happen. No, this will not happen. I think in last elections it was the FDP, the Liberal Party, which says, no, we don't go. After negotiating 4 weeks, we would rather not join a government than join a bad government. The head of the party is famed for this statement. Lieber keine Regierung als eine schlechte Regierung. But he will not say this again. So they will find a solution. And
it will take time, maybe.
I would say something which I really want to say because
and we have to finish up.
Yes, one moment. Excuse me. The good thing about German politics and German democracy is that, in the end of the day, these politicians are pragmatists, and the very good thing is they will all talk with one another. There's not the polarization we have in Turkey.
Yes.
Horrible. Or in the United States, horrible. So at the end of the day, they're all open to coalitions. And this is a factor of stability. And it's a good message also to the world.
Yeah. Ronald Meinardus, thank you very much for taking time to tell us about the elections, Germany. I hope it will give a good example for Europe, the results, and for Turkey as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for watching us.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyaskop 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin,